Right now, I'm 804 damage points away from my first ever 3K badge playing on mouse and keyboard. A few weeks ago, I had never played Apex on MNK, but after training for nearly 8 hours every single day and solo queuing so many pub matches that I've lost count, my sanity is at its breaking point, and it all comes down to this. 3 squads left, and our team is down 1 player. If I don't get this damage badge this game, I might actually go insane. But before I get to this, let me explain how I got here. Hi, I'm Dreamstrike, and last year I started playing Apex for the first time, and I did a 1-month challenge to see what was the highest damage badge that a noob could get by solo queuing pubs. Well, bada bing, bada boom, I got a 3K damage badge on the 31st day. Now, most of you love the video and seeing me struggle to learn Apex because, let's be honest, it's a pretty hard game. No! But there were some of you who said that playing on controller was basically cheating because of aim assist, and plenty of people were not impressed. Well, okay, Randall, get ready to be impressed. I haven't played any FPS games on mouse and keyboard in over 10 years, but my goal is to get a 3K badge solo queuing pubs and to do it faster than I did on controller. Okay, so the first thing that I had to do was get a baseline for my skill. Playing against real people seemed pretty scary, so I figured I would test my aim against some bots. And luckily there's a modified Apex game where you can practice your aim, and more importantly, you can track your training. So I loaded up the training simulator full of confidence, and the baseline test was simple. Shoot as many bots as possible in 60 seconds. Bro, no way. Oh, I'm so bad. I'm so bad. This is so much harder than I thought it was gonna be. Yeah. I'm not sure what I expected, but I kind of thought that I would be better than this. I know it might not seem like it, but I was trying so hard to hit these targets, and my aim was just not going where I wanted it to go. After 3 rounds, my average score was 15 bots, and I was feeling a bit overwhelmed. Everything just felt strange, from the way that I was sitting, to my hand placement on the desk, and to how I was holding the mouse.
It just feels so awkward.
I knew after playing so many hours of Apex that there was no chance I could win many gunfights. I didn't really know where to start to improve, so there was only one thing to do. Now fortunately, the MNK aim community is pretty passionate, and there are a lot of great videos online. So I spent some time watching videos and tested out everything from different mouse grips, to different forearm placements, and even to different keyboard angles.
Like, I don't know if it's like the fingertip grip or what, but just using more of my fingertips feels good.
I even went through a really scientific test to find the perfect mouse sensitivity. Okay, actually, I just looked up popular streamer settings. It all felt a bit weird, and it was definitely a lot of information to take in. Even just deciding whether to use 2 or 3 fingers on top of the mouse was a hard decision. 2 fingers seemed more comfortable, but 3 let me use the scroll wheel. Well, after some more trial and error, I figured it was now or never to test my skills against some real players. Now, I'd love to say that all of this new YouTube information helped me hit the ground running in mixtape, but that didn't happen. I got slammed over and over again for the next few hours. My plan for this challenge was pretty simple. I'd play the mixtape modes until I was consistently winning my gunfights, and then I would grind Battle Royale to get the badge. Well, I quickly found out that this was going to be harder than I thought. Real players move quite a bit differently from the bots in the range, and you know they actually shoot back. I was finding that close range gunfights were a nightmare on mouse and keyboard. My arm just couldn't keep up with how fast people were changing directions, so my aim was all over the place. Have you ever seen those videos of cats chasing laser pointers? Well, that's how I felt trying to play Apex on MNK. It felt like I was playing in slow motion and that my aim was always behind the enemy. It also didn't help that I just kept hitting the wrong buttons. No, I just hit the wrong button. That's a keyboard moment right there. Now, it's not like I expected to be amazing at the game, but after a few hours of mixtape, I was starting to think that this challenge might not be possible.
No.
I've been watching really good MNK players for several months, and I think sometimes when you watch them play, they make the game look so easy that you expect to load into a match and dominate just like them. But then you quickly find out that you're absolutely trash. The worst part about all of this was that the fights that I was losing, I would have easily won on controller. It was almost like I was starting back over trying to learn this game, and I was starting to think that maybe the YouTube comments were right. Maybe I wasn't anything without my aim assist. Was it really worth my mental sanity trying to prove some internet trolls wrong? But then I realized something, and it was big. Like earth-shattering big. Maybe it wasn't my fault that my aim was terrible. I mean, surely this was not a skill issue. Okay, so maybe a new mouse wasn't gonna instantly turn me into a pro, and I was now out $150. But I wouldn't say that it was a complete waste, because the Superlight fit much better in my hand and was way more comfortable to use. It was also really nice not having a wire get in the way. But more than anything, I felt motivated to play because getting new gear is always fun. I also started to look at the positives. My aim really wasn't that terrible when I looked at it. I was hitting a lot of my shots in the gunfights that I was losing, but I was oftentimes just missing a few critical shots when it really counted. And on top of that, it wasn't like I was losing every single gunfight, so I knew there was potential for me to get better. And there was one thing that I really wanted to try out to see if it would help my aim. Now, to be fair, I had tried aim training before on controller, but I didn't really like it because it's very hard to match the sensitivity curves in Apex and the aim training software. Also, who needs to aim train on controller when the game aims for you? But it seemed like aim training would be a great idea for mouse and keyboard because it's a raw input and I can match my sensitivity exactly like how it is in Apex. The way I saw it was that my mousepad was kind of like a coordinate system, and I was losing my gunfights because I didn't know how far to move my mouse to make my crosshair go where I wanted it to go on the screen. Well, luckily, I found a scenario from a guy on YouTube named Ron Rambo Kim, where you're surrounded by targets and each target is 45 degrees apart. So if you put your crosshair on one of them and then flick to another one, it's the exact same distance every time. And the same thing applies to targets that are further apart. So theoretically, I thought this might help me develop some muscle memory. The targets next to each other weren't so bad because I could use my wrist to get to them, but the ones behind me were really hard.
Once you swipe out of your comfort zone, then you just need to pick up the mouse and then reset it. And that just feels so unnatural to me. So I really got to get better at that.
Well, after a bit more practice, it was time to see if this aim training would actually pay off. Now, I don't think that it was a coincidence that later that night, I had a pretty insane team deathmatch game. Well, at least for my standards. My aim felt much better after some training, and it just seemed like I had a lot more control over where my mouse was going. And it wasn't just in gunfights, but even when I was just moving around the map and checking different angles. It felt like I was actually in control of my character, and I just had a lot more confidence while I was playing the game. I think it also really helped that earlier that day, I changed my weapon bindings.
So instead of using 1 and 2 for my primary and secondary weapons, I'm going to use Q and E.
This made it a lot easier to hit the right button under pressure because I didn't have to move my fingers nearly as far. Sometimes the smallest changes make the biggest difference. And finding these small ways to improve is why I love Apex Legends. There's always something you can do to make your gameplay better. Even after just 2 days of playing on mouse and keyboard, I was already feeling like a completely different player.
I'm throwing. No, I just threw.
Okay, maybe I wasn't a completely different player, but I was making progress, so I was satisfied. Now, we ended up losing the match, but I led our team in kills, which was pretty cool. If I could just keep training, I knew that I would get better. Well, sometimes it's not that simple, because on day 3, even after some more aim training and practicing in the firing range, I was still losing some really easy gunfights. One thing that I was noticing playing on mouse and keyboard was how much visual clutter there was on the screen when I was fighting someone. There were a lot of distractions that caused me to lose focus, and there were even some visual effects that blocked the enemy I was trying to aim at. The funny thing is, I hadn't really noticed this on controller, and I think it's because of rotational aim assist, which helps you track your enemies through all the visual clutter, when you're getting flashbanged by your screen in a gunfight. This honestly felt pretty unfair playing against controller players, and I was definitely getting a taste of my own medicine. So naturally, I started to do something that I really shouldn't have been doing.
Every time I die, I check and see if it's a console player. Like when I see someone who has insane aim.
Now, it might not sound that bad to check the death recap, but I was blaming a lot of my deaths on aim assist. After a couple of days of playing on mouse and keyboard, I was starting to have some mixed feelings about it. On one hand, it was so much fun knowing that when I won a gunfight, it was all my own skill that did the work. But on the other hand, it wasn't fun getting slammed in situations that I knew I would win if I was playing on controller. I was loving the challenge of learning mouse and keyboard, but there was a little voice in the back of my head telling me that playing with aim assist would make life much easier.
This is where you belong. Room for one more. One of us.
So with these thoughts racing through my head, I went to sleep wondering what to do. Do I take the easy route and go back to controller? Or do I take a chance and see just how far I can push myself to get better? I mean, I can't let the haters win, right? I need this 3K badge. Even though I had some doubts, I couldn't give up at this point. I'm not a quitter. So over the next couple of days, I practiced a lot. One quote that I heard a long time ago was to embrace the suck when you're learning something new. You aren't going to be an expert overnight, so just enjoy the process of getting better. Yeah, aim assist was definitely overpowered, but there were plenty of pro M&K players that were way better than me, so I had a lot of things that I could do to improve. For instance, I started working on my vertical aim with new practice scenarios. I worked on my grip because I found that curling my fingers helped me aim better, and I even practiced a bit of my movement in the range against the dummies. Just focusing on the small things that I could improve helped me not get overwhelmed with the challenge of getting this 3K badge. One of the things that I think ended up helping out the most was downloading a new aim trainer and practicing with moving targets. Apex requires a lot of tracking with your mouse, and the static practice drills that I was doing weren't really helping me develop this skill. But fortunately, Viscose on YouTube has a lot of great aim training guides, and she helped me realize that I needed to add tracking drills into my practice. Well, after a couple of days of straight grinding, it seemed like I had made some noticeable improvements. My recoil control was feeling great, my tracking was getting smooth, and most importantly, I was winning a large percentage of my close-range gunfights, even against decently sweaty players. I went back to the baseline test that I had done at the start of the challenge, and after 3 rounds, the average number of bots that I downed increased by almost 50%, which was kinda crazy. I was a bit nervous to start grinding Battle Royale because I had played a couple of games earlier that week just to see what it would be like on mouse and keyboard, and it was completely different than Mixtape, and much harder. But you know, sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and go for it. And what happened next surprised me. The map in rotation on pubs was Olympus, and I decided that for Battle Royale I would be playing Wraith. She was easily my most played legend, so I didn't have to think about using her abilities. If I was gonna beat all of these controller demons, I needed every ounce of brainpower focused on hitting my shots. And after a couple of warm-up games, I found myself paired up with Diego and SpongeBob. We landed hot at Bonsai Plaza because when you're trying to go for high damage games, you have to get the momentum going quickly. I immediately picked up a car SMG and killed an enemy Pathfinder, and I have to say that while one-clipping players on controller felt good, doing it on mouse and keyboard felt even better. My teammates then got into a fight with the rest of the same enemy squad, and I rushed in to help. The Bangalore on our team used her smokes, which ended up preventing me from seeing anything, so I was basically left to spray and pray with a Spitfire. But fortunately, I hit a couple of my shots, which gave me the confidence to push ahead and easily clean up the other 2 players on that team. But the action was far from over because 2 enemy teams had landed at the top of the other tower, and as luck would have it, they were taking a long time to fight. This allowed our team to rush in and third party to get some easy cleanup kills. We wiped one of the enemy teams and the other ran away, but just a few moments later they made a horrible push against us even though we had the high ground. I missed some pretty easy shots against the Revenant because I couldn't see past my teammate, but a few seconds later I made up for it by knocking their lifeline. Now our fuse dropped down from height and chased the enemy team, which is against like every cardinal sin in this game, and he was killed pretty quickly, but after some cat and mouse back and forth, we were able to get his banner and hit a quick res to bring our squad back to full force. This allowed us to easily hold this team against the edge of zone because it was a 3v2 situation. Even though it wasn't the best gun, I kind of liked using the Spitfire on M&K because the magazine is large and it allowed me to miss some shots without feeling like I needed to reload all the time. And just like that, with round 1 closing, I had quickly secured 7 kills and I was nearly halfway to a 3K badge. Could this challenge really be that easy? Would I be able to match what I did on controller after just a week of practice on M&K? Well, I was just about to find out, because pretty quickly after this fight, we rotated towards the center of the map and found an unsuspecting team that definitely did not hear us coming. This allowed me to get quite a lot of entry damage in the fight and confidently push ahead. I then found myself face to face with their Wraith, and despite having the wrong gun out, I did a good bit of damage. But now I found myself one shot, and while I probably should have healed up, I was feeling so confident from the previous gunfights that I immediately rechowed and knocked their Wraith. But then I had a classic mouse and keyboard moment, and I missed a ton of easy shots against their Maggie and ended up getting down myself. SpongeBob finished what I had started and was then quick to smoke me out and go for the res, but unfortunately Diego wasn't on the same page and he sprinted into the building and lost his 1v1 against our Newcastle, and then he immediately left the game. And this is where everything started to go wrong, because after resetting, SpongeBob and I took out 2 of the people in that team and then chased the third away, which was great, but then I eliminated a player at the bottom of the hill and made a really stupid play to slide down to look for ammo without realizing that the ring was about to close. So in the blink of an eye, I went from having this challenge in the bag to running for my life against zone damage. Now because I was playing Wraith, I was able to set up a portal to get a speed boost and get away, but in the midst of that chaos, my teammate somehow died to zone. Once again, this was probably my fault because I should have been rotating earlier, and I'm sure he was confused as to what I was doing. And the other bad news was that the lobby then started to die out really quickly, and I was left as a solo player against the last squad. Trying to farm 800 damage off the last team was not going to be easy.
Well, this is gonna be chalked.
I tried to sneak up the hill, but they saw that coming from about a mile away, so I repositioned thinking that they were going to aggressively push me. But then they simply just waited on height, and of course the zone pulled to them on the high ground, which meant I was pretty much out of luck, and I eventually died to ring damage because I had nowhere to go. Yeah, that was a weird game and kind of embarrassing to die that way. Now I could have been mad at myself for making some dumb mistakes that cost me that game, but I was just surprised at how well I did. Getting a 2K badge so quickly into this challenge was not what I expected. And what's crazy is that the next day went even better. I got not one, but 2 more 2K damage gains. There's an old saying that once is luck, twice is coincidence, but 3 times is a pattern. Maybe I was born to play mouse and keyboard. The game just felt so responsive and much faster than on controller. I was completely hooked on this new input, and I wanted to find everything that I could do to get better. Unfortunately, my death in this game right here told me exactly what I needed to work on.
No, I did not mean to slide, bro.
You see, I had spent all this time training my right arm, and I'd kind of forgotten about my left, which was an issue because I didn't have all the button bindings completely memorized, so I kept messing up and pressing the wrong keys. This wasn't too much of an issue in the LTMs because if I messed up a button, I could just respawn back in with another life. But now that I was playing Battle Royale, I couldn't afford to make these stupid mistakes. And when I thought about it, the problem wasn't that I didn't have the keys memorized, it was that it took me too long to recall the information from my brain on what key to press when I was in a gunfight. So what would end up happening is I would panic and just mash keys and end up hitting the wrong button. Well, because I'm a nerd, I figured out a way that I could fix this. Instead of just grinding out more games where I would eventually get faster at pressing the right keys, I found a random generator website and I listed all the commands that I needed to know and I put them on my left monitor. And then I set my computer up so that every time I pressed my foot pedal, the generator would spit out one of these actions and I could practice recalling the information in the firing range. It's kind of like what I used to do in school when I would use flashcards to study for tests. So I ended up taking the weekend off from Battle Royale to just focus on practicing, and by day 12 I was ready to get this 3K badge. But this is when I hit a major setback for this challenge. Because even though my aim was feeling great and I had fixed my left hand, something had changed with the game. It seemed like almost every game that I played, my teammates and I were not on the same page, and we got outplayed by a team with much better communication. Like for instance in this game, I was on 1200 damage with 10 squads still up, and we got into a fight with another team. I used my portal to get us through their catalyst wall, and the fight started off great, but then the horizon on my team threw a weird gravity lift that blocked off the stairs, which completely threw me off, and that team was able to pick us off one by one. What I wasn't ready for was how much more difficult my lobbies had gotten in just a couple of days. The teams that we were fighting were suddenly much more coordinated. With all of my early success, I had kind of forgotten about skill-based matchmaking. So even though I was definitely getting better, the opponents I was playing were also getting better. To be successful in solo queue, you have to be able to win gunfights when you're at a disadvantage or outnumbered. And my aim still wasn't consistent enough to do this against good players, and I was missing way too many shots. I hadn't made much progress in the last few days, and I was starting to get a little bit nervous about this challenge. So by day 13 it was time for a change. What I needed was to gain more experience fighting better players. It was time to grind R5 Reloaded. Now I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but in the same modified Apex game that has the aim trainer, there are several public servers where you can 1v1 other players. And because not many people are willing to go through the effort of installing other programs to practice, these servers are very sweaty. And as you might expect, things didn't go too well. There were a lot of movement demons who used these 1v1s to practice their mechanics, and trying to hit this crazy movement on mouse and keyboard was really hard. I wouldn't say that I enjoyed getting slammed over and over again, but I'm just so stubborn that when I'm not good at something, I get more motivated to keep doing it until I figure it out.
This is helping my tracking so much because the firing range dummies are just way too predictable.
So I played for many hours, and eventually I did get a little bit better. Definitely not great, but there was some improvement. And just like I had hoped, all of this gunfight practice paid off with a big game on day 14. We landed in hot at Energy Depot, and I quickly found a Hemlock and Car SMG. This helped me quickly secure 2 kills off the drop because the Hemlock is actually insane if you hit your burst shots. Now I didn't want to waste any time, so I quickly rotated over to Power Grid to look for another team to fight, and just as I suspected, a team had landed here as well. I got the high ground on the building that they were in, and I was able to knock the first enemy player with some well-placed shots. And just as I was engaging the second enemy, my teammates caught up and we very quickly wiped this enemy squad. I was feeling extremely confident to take on any fight, but unfortunately this is one of those games where it's a race against the clock and the lobby was dying out without us finding many players. This eventually changed when we rotated over to Hammond Labs. Once again, I was the leader for my team and I got a very quick entry knock. And as I was healing up, I rotated around the flank as my teammates rushed in to take my position, and this team was just no match for us and we quickly wiped them. I popped another evac tower to try to cover some distance and find someone else to fight, but right as we were hitting it, a team started shooting at us and we ended up getting split. This team decided to focus on me, so I wasn't able to get much more damage, but I was a nice distraction and my teammates eliminated this squad too. However, now the pressure was really on. There were only 2 squads left, and I had a lot of damage between me and this 3K badge. After rotating back to Energy Depot, we found one of the remaining teams, and we were able to cut off their rotation to the next circle. I thought we were in the perfect position to fight this team, but they ended up making a pretty smart play, and they just completely ran away from us. I can't say that I hate the strategy, but it was a bit frustrating because I ended up wasting a ton of heavy ammo, and I wasn't able to loot any death boxes to replenish my inventory. This is also where one of my teammates decided to hit the big zip line and full send that team that ran away from us by himself, and he was quickly eliminated from the game. My other teammate and I linked back up, and I grabbed a wingman from the care package to get ready for the end of the game. With only 3 squads left and a huge portion of the map still in zone, all of the gunfights that I found myself in were long range. And the issue with this was that I was low on ammo, and I ended up running through way too many shields in a short period of time. I should have played more passively, but I knew I needed to get more damage, and this led to me completely running out of shields. Well, apparently one of the squads was just a solo player, and he got taken out, and this left me and my teammate in a 2v3. I tried my best to hold this team as they were rotating to our building and zone, but I pretty much was out of ammo in my hemlock, which made this really difficult. I did knock their bloodhound to make this a 2v2, but then this team played really smart and they grouped up, and they were able to isolate both me and my teammate to eventually get the win.
Just so frustrating not having ammo. 2500 badge on M&K, let's go.
Yeah, I don't know if you could hear it in my voice, but even though I had just gotten a new damage badge, I was disappointed. I was annoyed at myself for running out of ammo and heals, and I was also kind of mad that I missed so many wingman shots towards the end of the game. If I had just hit a couple more, that could have been a completely different outcome. I should have been happy to get the badge, but all I could think about was these stupid mistakes. And on top of that, the next day was not great. I had a few solid games, but pretty much every time that I was doing well, the lobby died out so fast that it was almost impossible to reach my goal. Yeah, getting wins was fun, but I wanted more. And after a whole day of this, I was starting to get really frustrated because this was just something that I couldn't control. I couldn't practice anything that would make the lobby stay healthy for longer. And the funny thing about getting really frustrated is that once it happened, I started to play worse. I needed a ton of focus to hit my shots on mouse and keyboard, and when I was annoyed with the game, I wasn't fully locked in, which meant I lost more gunfights and got even more frustrated. And to add on to that, solo queue is just such a weird experience, and you meet a lot of, shall we say, interesting characters, which was also not helping me focus. Like for instance, in one game, I had a guy who obviously didn't think too highly of his teammates, and he got down during a gunfight, and before I could even attempt to res him, he just left the game. And then another time, I think I had a brand new player on my team because he somehow died out of bounds on store point, which I don't think I've ever seen before. Now honestly, that was kind of funny, but it didn't really make me feel much better about this challenge. I'd gotten a 2K badge on day 7, and after more than a week of straight grinding, I barely had anything to show for it. I was mentally checked from losing so many times, and I just didn't know what I could do differently to get this 3K badge. Now, I'd be lying if I say that I didn't think about quitting this challenge around this time. The haters were right. Mouse and keyboard was a whole different game compared to controller. And I think the hardest part that I was having is that when you're trying to improve at something, you don't often notice that you're improving because the changes are so small day to day. One day you feel great and you're having all this success, but then the next day you're just in the blender. So what ends up happening is you feel like you aren't getting anywhere. And with games that have skill-based matchmaking, you never really know the strength of the lobbies that you're in, so it's really hard to measure if you're improving. I was also making this a lot worse because I was still comparing my aim on controller to mouse and keyboard. But I don't think that that was healthy because on a raw input, you're simply going to miss more shots because you can never be as consistent as a machine. Playing with aim assists for so many years, I completely warped my thoughts on what good aim looked like. I had to let go of aim assists and just focus on the things that I can control. And that's being patient and continuing to show up every day. Because the day-to-day struggle where you don't feel like you're improving is typically part of a larger picture, and if you just keep showing up, you really can't lose. And besides all of that, whenever I'm faced with a hard problem, it oftentimes seems like the answer I've been looking for has been right in front of me the entire time. So with my new legend unlocked, I went back into the matchmaking gauntlet. I'm pretty sure that I watched a His Watson solo queue stream one time, and he was using Loba, so I figured I would give it a try. And after just a few games, I could tell that I was now on the right track. Her Black Market ultimate was really nice because I never had to worry about running out of ammo in the game, and then her ring toss was great to get different angles in a gunfight. Although I did have to practice it a little bit.
Wait, it just goes straight up?
One thing that's pretty cool about Apex is just changing your legend can make it feel like you're playing a completely different game. And after just a few games with Loba, something big was about to happen. We landed in Han at the core and quickly got to work fighting several different teams. I think it was just 2 teams, but it was kind of hard to say because most of the enemies we were playing were very split. However, this worked out well for us because my team was playing like a unit. Unlike many other solo queue games, all of us were helping each other out. Like for instance, I chased this solo Mirage and then downed him off the zipline, but it took me a minute to get to him, and by that time he was back up and it was a 1v2. I re-downed the Mirage, but the Ashland team was pretty good and they hit me with an Arc Star. But it didn't matter because my teammates swung right in and easily wiped this team out of the game. However, just as we were about to reset, another team came into third party. I was able to get a Phoenix kit off, but now we were in a horrible position to fight this team. But fortunately, I was now playing Loba and I was able to use her ring toss to reposition and get better angles in the gunfight. This helped me knock the enemy Pathfinder, and then I got my teammates full on their Octane. However, my teammate then full sent their Vantage and got down before I could get to him, so now it was a 1v1 with the game on the line. But I stayed calm and I was able to get some entry damage with my Hemlock, which then gave me the confidence to full send the fight and get the kill. I quickly rezzed my teammates, but I knew that with only 6 teams left, I had to pick up the pace to get this badge. And as luck would have it, we rotated perfectly into 2 teams that were fighting, and we got some of the easiest third-party kills of all time. We then made the decision to chase the other team, and this decision would have fatal consequences, because the last 2 enemies from this team could now hold us from the next zone. My heart was racing as I saw all of my teammates starting to get low on health. I tried to stay calm and I knocked the horizon, but the ring was closing in and there was really only one thing that I could do. Yeah, I meant for that toss to go further, but it hit the wall. And now it was up to my teammate. Could he clutch this 1v1 and save this game? Yeah, our team had been working so well all game, and this time it was no different. I love Apex for the gameplay and the movement, but the heart of this game is teamwork. And when you have teammates that work together, you feel so much more confident on the map. And this confidence helped our squad pretty easily wipe this next team despite it being a 2v3. And now I was 804 damage points away from my first 3K badge on mouse and keyboard. And as I went to go fight these last 2 teams, I was feeling all kinds of emotions about this challenge. Relearning mouse and keyboard after 10 years had been extremely hard, but it was so rewarding. The skill ceiling is basically infinite on M&K. I can train every day for the rest of my life and still have things that I can improve. Now don't get me wrong, playing on controller is still a lot of fun, and it's definitely not cheating, and people should not be shamed for liking one input over the other. At the end of the day, it's up to the developers to balance the game, not the players. But even though I still like controller, I'm definitely switching to mouse and keyboard for Apex. There's something that's just so indescribable about hitting an amazing shot without any help from a computer.
Let's go! We got the 3K! Finally! Octane, you were my hero for reviving me there.
Amazing game. Good luck in your games. Have a good rest of your night, brother.
Alright, thank you, man. You too.
This challenge definitely made me a little bit insane because now literally all I can think about is getting better at mouse and keyboard, so stay tuned for more videos.